You're listening to This Week in Property. Stay current, relevant and up to date in the world of property investment. Learn from the UK's leading property professionals and grow your property business.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Property. I'm your host Richard Swan, and you're going to really enjoy today's show, where I have just sat down and had a chat with Harry Downs, the Managing Director of Fizzy Living. Now, if hearing that phrase, fizzy living, put a little smile on your face, sounds quite bubbly and upbeat, then that's perfect, because that's one of the many aims that Harry has had with the company. And what's it all about? Well, I'm just going to tease you along. I'm going to say that there's a very specific customer base in mind. Let's call them the renty somethings. There's a very particular approach and mindset involved in what Harry's doing with the venture and his team around him. And I'll throw in the word community on that basis. That's enough of a tease there. And I'm also going to say that there's an important test called the Amelia Test that more landlords should probably do when they come to putting in place all of their properties and structures and organisations and business plans. But I won't say any more than that. Yeah, let's dive into it. Let's hear about the insights, the fascinating venture, the background, what the future holds, and Harry's own experiences, opinions, background, and the plans that he has for going forward. So without any further ado, I give you Mr. Harry Downs. So Harry, fantastic to have you on the show this morning. Good to see you and hear you. I'm sure the listeners are going to enjoy hearing from yourself and the fantastic venture that you're running with. So Fizzy Living, yes, we'll get into that. But first of all, the man himself, Harry. Who is he? Where has he been? What is his background, summary, bio? What has he been up to in the world that has brought him to this point in time? How would you describe your journey so far?
Okay, well, thank you very much for that introduction, and I'm very happy to be here. So my career started when I left school. I did 7 years in the army, travelled all over the world, left as a captain, having done 2 years attached to the Canadian Army. Came back and went into property and into residential property on the agency side. John D. Wood, Savills, pretty sort of typical working in London. And then I went to Manhattan Loft Corporation as sales and marketing director. I was there for just under 15 years. And we were developing, we were basically taking warehouses and turning them into really cool spaces that a purchaser would fit out the interior space himself. He bought a serviced box and put in it what he wanted. And that gave me a really good sort of insight into the fact that property doesn't need to be sort of boring and straight. You can do whatever you want with it. I was there for a while. Coming out of that, back into agency for a bit. And that was around the time Lehman collapsed. And the banks stopped lending money to speculative residential developments. Mm-hmm. And that seemed a bit weird because most people still had jobs and they still needed somewhere to live and they could still certainly afford to pay rent. But the buildings weren't going up. So I thought, similar to practically everywhere else in the world, where renting is a big part of the property, it's a big sector of the property market. I thought, well, we should be doing that here. And so I went about setting up a platform that would enable that to happen here. And that was about 2012. Mm-hmm. Got into partnership with Thames Valley Housing, who what I was proposing was literally half a step away from what they were already doing. And so they put the initial seed capital in. They invested £30 million, which is massive at the time. Yep. That bought our first 2 buildings. And basically what we were out to do was to set up a range of flats that were affordable for young professionals. They were the ones who were being hit by the market. And basically, if you didn't have 100 grand in the bank, there was nowhere for you to live. Yeah. And so what I was trying to do was to find blocks of flats which were in safe, fun, noisy areas, well connected, I've got this rule that I wouldn't buy a building unless it passes the Amelia Test. Amelia is my daughter. If I wouldn't want her to live in the building, I wouldn't buy it.
Fantastic.
And what we ended up doing was, if you think about it, London's got about 150 town centres. We started buying buildings in those town centres. So they're surrounded, well, they've got a tube station that's got to be within a 5-minute safe walk. But it's all of the other bits, the pubs, the restaurants, the gyms, the cinemas, are all there. So you don't need to have it in your building, because if you have it in your building, it's going to be expensive, and that's going to affect the rent.
Yes.
So if they're all around you, you don't need them. So what we've ended up with now is we now have 8 buildings around London. Got 2 in the west, in Hayes and Epsom, a few in the east, and we now have 700 flats under management. We've got 300 flats under construction, and we have a business model which is quite well known in the market. Every single one of our buildings has a manager called Bob, the building manager, and they're there to look after the building, to get things fixed, to take parcels, to chat to tenants, to sort out issues, and it's turned into a really fun place to live. Each building is it's a place in its own right, with a bunch of friendships. We're pet friendly, so I think we've got more dogs than children at the moment. It's just a sort of good fun place to live.
Yes, yeah, and that was really coming out. I was reading through the brief of each of the sites and where they're based and what kind of services are there, and that really jumps out. This is not just a space. You are not getting a box and you just disappear. You've created that environment, because each of the sites, they'll talk about something like a hub. It has a ground floor hub space for people to interact with. Is that really crucial to the service that you're providing for your tenants?
I think having a community is what the whole thing is about. Quite apart from the fact that in our business model, if we've got an empty flat, we're not doing so well. It's all about cracking on with a place that people actually want to live in and want to stay in. And it isn't just about people who can't afford to can't afford to buy, so they have to do this. Because actually, there's an awful lot of people out there now who, what they call it, the generation rent for a reason. They rent their music, they rent their cars, they rent all sorts of things. And just recently, there was, I think Halifax did a survey that about 29% of homeowners' income goes on the mortgage. Right. Well, everyone says that you're way better off to own than to rent. Well, my tenants, the average that they spend is 27%, and the other difference is that's all they spend, because that's the rent. If you own, you've got your mortgage payment, which is already more than the rent. Then you've got insurance, maintenance, God knows what, all of these extra bits and pieces, that service charge, which is, a huge amount. So all of those things you've got to pay on top. So actually, we're moving away from, it just being a flat, you've got to own your own castle. Because if you now can get buildings where they're designed for renting, they're managed for renting, they're held long term. So actually, if my tenants stay for 5 years, I'm delighted. And we get to know them better, and it all works well. And, we do all sorts of things. We will, if a tenant stays a long time, partway through the tenancy, we might repaint the whole flat. We already throw in an annual free spring clean, which we give to our tenants. So there are all sorts of things that we do to say, hey, we like you, we want you to stay. What can we do for you?
I love that. And going back to the start of what you were saying there, the word that really jumped out when you started talking was community. I loved hearing that from you, because, let's be honest, if you to put up some flash words, London, renting, business, it's kind of cold. There's a, no, it's business, stuff upper lip, hard landlord, but your approach to it is completely different. I love that.
Yeah, but it's managing a property is pretty simple, and there are things that you've got to do and there are things that you might do, things that are good to do. We like to do the good things as well as the things we have to do. And I suppose, I like to hire people whose default facial expression is a smile. They're people who, they want to help. They're happy to see someone coming in. How are you? How's your day going? It's, is that your new dog? It's that, all of that sort of thing. That's what makes it more fun. You can sit there with a glum face all day, waiting for 5 o'clock to come around so you can go home, or you can enjoy your day.
Yes.
And actually, if you have a bunch of people who are enjoying what they're doing, and you've got a bunch of people who appreciate that we're there doing what we can. I mean, things still go wrong. Buildings still spring leaks or whatever.
Of course.
Door lock might break. But at least we're there to help, to get it fixed.
That's fantastic. Oh, you're definitely speaking my language here. This is wonderful to hear. I love that. And pulling on some of those threads then, actually, let me check your opinions on things. Do you think there has been, or there is, maybe just going through it, a massive cultural change within the UK when it comes to property? Because you mentioned one word, I was going to pull out castle. There's that phrase, the Englishman's home is his castle. This is what you do. You buy, you keep, you hold. You mentioned that earlier. And then if we pull on the other thread, these people you're talking about, these tenants, the renty somethings, as some of your material talk about. I love that aspect. Completely different mindset. No. I'm going to be doing this. So I'm going to spend my 27%, as you say, on this space for me, and I'm going to enjoy my life in other ways. Is there a big cultural change within Britain, within London?
There is absolutely, definitely a cultural change, and it's partly about the way the market's going. It's partly about the way people are thinking. If you look at how people work nowadays, for example, they do a lot more working from home. A lot more people work for themselves. They are consultants. A lot of businesses find it easier to hire a load of consultants than to have full-time staff. People are living differently. And I think that having the flexibility, I think in the old days, God, when I was in my 20s, if you rented a flat, I mean, they were diabolical. And you normally had, all your mates there as well to try and bring the rent down. And the landlord came round to pick up the rent every Tuesday morning, and it was awful. Now it is very, very different. Now it is socially acceptable to rent. You can go in. Our buildings are all brand new when you buy them. So the oldest one's now 5 years old. And we spend a fortune on maintaining them, and it's very, very different. And I think people are now saying, "Hang on a minute, why do I need to go and spend a fortune on a home?" Which is, 8 times my salary or whatever, to put this massive anchor around my neck, which is the mortgage.
Yeah.
We've got historically low interest rates. They are only going to go upwards. So what's that going to do? But hang on a minute. Let's say, you've got 2 people with 100 grand, because, it's got to be fair. The one with 100 grand goes and buys a flat. So 80 grand of that gets gobbled up in deposit, and the rest is fees and all the rest of it. The other chap puts his 100 grand in the stock market, which actually is doing pretty well at the moment. And he pays his rent, and the other guy pays his mortgage. We've already had that chat. They're about the same, but actually. But then, over the next few years, people are saying London property prices are going to be flat, and a lot of the country, they've got to come back down. So I'd be saying, why am I going to dump a lot of money into that on the basis that everyone's saying it's a really bad investment, and also it's really risky? Because if I lost my job, I couldn't pay back the mortgage. I could lose the whole lot. Rental guy, 100 grand still in the stock market, going up 8% a year, very nice. No reason why that should change. And all he's paying is the rent. So it's now, and they're saying, and also there's a landlord who I actually like, which that hasn't been around before. I can take my dog along with me. It's really convenient. And so I think that whole mindset, it is now becoming socially acceptable to rent. And I think that's a very good thing. Now, we're never going to take over the market. We're there to help out with a small sector of it. Right. And the better we can do it, and the better, more professional we can be, the faster it'll be accepted. And, onwards and upwards.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, it really is fascinating. You're right in so many of the things you've touched upon. That it's certainly something we see. City life, yeah, definitely. There is that mindset shift of no. This is how we work. I'm going from this company to that company. I'm renting this space. As you say, my music is from Spotify. My television is from Amazon. There is a total change, and it's great. I think it is positive because it's people actually asking themselves, "Oh, wait a minute. Why should I follow this cliche thing, or why should I follow that mantra that's been passed down? What do I want? What do I want from my life, from my work, from my passion, from my community?" It's great. So on the Amelia test, now, has that been fully road tested? Has the lady herself been to these places and given Dad the tick of approval?
Oh yeah, no, in fact, since I started this up, she's got married, and then she's her husband's actually in the army, so she's not around. So but I have got, our average tenant is 31 years old, so
right.
I've got a lot of Amelias in our buildings.
Right.
And what we do every year is we have a customer survey. We've actually outsourced it this year to a company called Home Views, and they're the sort of TripAdvisor of the property market.
Right.
And that's how we find out what people think. And we're pretty chuffed with the responses we get. If we get a bad response, we do something about it. Yeah. But that's how we know it works. And that's how, if a new idea comes up or someone comes up with a suggestion, well, why wouldn't we look at it? We'd be mad not to. Because it might be an idea that we haven't thought of that would help. So we always do.
That's fantastic. A real customer focus there. And that helps the business evolve. As you say, I never even thought of that. Do you really want that? Is that something you need? No problem. Let us arrange it. Yep. That's fantastic. And then you're going to keep them happy. Happy customers, happy business, and things
it's good
move
for
on.
Marketing. So
exactly. Yeah, and it keeps you a step ahead. That's the thing. Yes. There'll be other businesses following you. Wait, what are they doing over there now? Why did they do that? Well, it's actually the tenants. They actually listen to their customers. Dead simple. But why don't more people do it?
Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yes. So, changing gears. Let's slip into the business side. So we mentioned the tie-in with Thames Valley. To kick off. Was that a connection that was always there for you? Was it just serendipity that you were following your path, and as you said earlier, they were quite close to doing something similar? How did that come about for you?
Well, it came about because when I had this idea, I'd never managed property before. I've been, either an agent or I've been developing property. Mm-hmm. So I needed to get into bed with somebody who did know how to do that, and who would benefit from what we were trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to me pretty obvious that housing associations who were losing government investment, they needed to, create more profit, which they're allowed to do. They could, and the profits they just give to their charitable side. Mm-hmm. It seemed to me that they were a very good potential partner. And I pitched to several. Thames Valley Housing said, we like this. They were already doing private sector development to generate profits. So this was very, very simple for them. What we did then was we set up the platform so that it was sort of effectively separate from what they were doing, but it used their skills. They'd been running at the time, well, they launched in 1964, and they had about 18,000 flats under management when we joined up in 2012. So, they had massive experience, which was very, very useful to us. So then we set up using those skills, but doing it in a sort of private sector way, where we know that if something goes wrong, if it doesn't get fixed quickly, comments will be on social media. So, that's what we're up against, which isn't quite the same necessarily with the Housing Association. But we learned so much, and we still work with them. We still work out of their offices, and they're still immensely helpful. Though, we are clearly driven by market forces as well, which they aren't so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fascinating. And on obviously you mentioned there £30 million investment way back then in 2012. The other on the funding angle has been, is it Silver Arrow also working with yourselves?
Yeah, that's Silver Arrow is the wholly owned subsidiary of the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, which is a sovereign wealth fund, Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund. They invest all over the world in all sorts of sectors, property being one of them. And they've got a lot of what's called multifamily in the States, and institutional rental property in Europe, and they'd been trying to get into the UK for years, but there wasn't really a market. And then they saw what we were doing, and they are our sole funding partner. They're number one on my speed dial list on the phone, and they've been a fantastic partner, very generous, but they know what they're doing. This is not a new sector for them, so it's been great.
That's fantastic. Although there's a negative slant here, I'm worried for you as a fellow dad, Harry, because what I've heard recently, if Amelia listens to this podcast, number one, you've now superseded her with virtual Amelias, all your different tenants in that 31 age group, and now number two, she's been pushed down to number two in your speed dial. I mean, this is terrible. Absolutely terrible.
No, I shouldn't have said that, should I? But yeah, exactly.
No, I know she's close to your heart, that's for sure. She'll be quite happy with Dad. So let's jump into the organisation of this. Seems to be a key thing, because you mentioned big numbers, all these different sites. If I pick on even one of them, the Black Horse one, the Black Horse Lane.
Black Horse Road, yeah.
Yep. And you're talking about, with dealing with Taylor Wimpey, purchased like 111 different types of flats and so on. They've got a new 500 unit development. There's all these big numbers. And you spoke about Bob, the local guy, in each site, the site manager, if you like. Is that key to that level underneath you and your team, making sure each site is ticking along perfectly? Is that a key to your success?
It's absolutely 100% key to how we run the business. We're a hugely integrated team, and the Bobs on sites, actually, you say he, in fact, most of them are girls.
I see. Yeah.
But they are the day-to-day, they're running the day-to-day operation of the site. So they're there on larger sites. So, for example, Black Horse Lane, 111 flats, we have 2 Bobs there. And on larger sites, we'll have more than that. But we normally have sort of about 1 per 70 flats.
Right.
And they're there doing the day-to-day stuff. They report to the ops manager.
Right.
And, so I visit every building once a month. The ops manager visits every building once a week, and we're in constant touch. Beside that, we've got a sales team. We do all marketing in-house. So we don't use agents for anything. And so any call that comes in, it's dealt with in head office and passed out to the sales team. And then they'll set up a viewing in one of the buildings, which is either done by the Bob, or we do, I think about 25% of our viewings are done with Skype, which is absolutely brilliant. So people don't even need to come to the building. They get a one-on-one tour around, a conversation with either the Bob or one of the sales team, looking at whatever they want. And honestly, we do 25% of deals like that now. So people never come into the building. Then we've got a repairs team who they report into the ops team as well. And they are sort of Fizzy badged experts driving around in a Fizzy van. And they do about a day a week at each building, just doing stuff. Then we've got an asset management team who are looking after the business side of it, and making sure we're charging the right rent, that we're aware when leases are coming up, where the whole business is running properly. So it's very, very integrated. But everyone knows sort of what everyone else is doing. Yeah. And it makes it's still a smallish team. We're under 30 people. But it means that everybody is aware of what everyone else is doing. And that's what makes it work.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, I can see the structure you've got there is really key to that success, that organisational element, keeping on top of so many moving parts. I suppose the human element, touching back to what you've been talking about, is that Bob, the male Bob or the female Bob. I suppose the hiring process is also key there, that they have that smiley face we spoke about, and that interact, because that's the interface for your tenants, isn't it?
Yeah, it's less a property business and more a hospitality business at that end. And so it's understanding what's important, because if your tenants aren't happy, aren't being looked after, aren't getting the services that they expect and should be delivered, then we're getting it wrong. And so getting the right person in each role is massively important. And they're all people in different teams. Are very difficult. The asset management team, are very different to the sales and marketing team.
Yeah.
They're all 100% good at their jobs, but my God, they're different people.
Yeah.
And that's what you need. You can't have everyone the same. And they're all very different, they're all much younger than me. I'm the old grandpa. So, it's having a whole bunch of people who can work together and really rely on each other because they know that the other people have got the skills that they haven't got.
Yes, exactly. Fantastic. A marriage of different skills. So the biggest question of all, come on, Harry, explain yourself. Fizzy living. That's what all the listeners are thinking. Where on earth did that come from? Who picked that out the bag? What's the story behind it?
Well, it was really important to have a strong brand, because if we were going to bring in institutions, they wouldn't want to even think that someone's going to call them up and say the boiler isn't working.
Yeah.
So the brand had to be there as the sort of barrier around and the protective wall as well, so it works both ways.
Right.
And also, I was very keen that anyone walking past the back of a Fizzy building would say, that's Fizzy, I know what they do. And all our buildings are run in exactly the same way, same standard operating procedures across the whole business. So that was really important. So I sat down with a branding agency, literally for 2 days. And branding agencies' average age of staff was, it must have been 25, I should think. And they just fired questions at me. Right. And it was all about, how are you going to run the business? What's it going to be like? What's your people going to be like? How are you going to talk to them? What's you going to do? And answered all these questions. And they came back with, a sort of brand wheel, which was about a fun place to live, but it was honest, it was affordable, but also, good quality. It went through all of these things. And they came back to it's all like it's a bit effervescent living, isn't it? Well, no one can spell effervescent. It's hard to say it as well, particularly after lunch. So that came down to Fizzy. And actually, Fizzy Living, everyone started, good grief, are you sure? Isn't that a bit of a silly name? And see, well, that's sort of part of it, because it should make you smile. It should be fun. It's not boring. It can't be boring.
Yeah.
And so, Fizzy, not flat. Well, we're dealing in flats, but, let's have it a bit noisy. So that's where that came from.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, it's nice and bubbly. It's uplifting. Yeah. I love it. It does make you smile. Turns the mouth up. Fantastic. Now, I'm quite sure it's not all been Fizzy living for you. What has been the challenges? Come on, tell us. Lay your soul bare, because it doesn't always go to plan, I suppose, on things. What's been the biggest hurdles you've found to jump over?
Well, that's an easy one, actually. It's getting new stock. We should be able to, we're backed by a sovereign wealth fund. We should be able to put buildings up all over the place. And we can't, because planning goes against us. Even if we go to the planning committee with recommendation for approval, we can still get turned down by, on the night by the planning committee, by sort of NIMBYs who just don't want blocks of flats. Yeah. And that is, we have a major property crisis in this country. We have got to stop prices going up the way they are. Yeah. 20 years ago, you moved house because you felt like it, and it wasn't too expensive to do it. Now it is immensely expensive to move house, and people don't anymore. And we've sort of got to get back to the stage where your house isn't your prime investment. It's a great place to live and it's a safe investment, but at the moment we've got to get around that one. So that's the problem. It's sorting out planning. I mean, you could argue, I would certainly argue, that a block of flats is infrastructure, because we need it so badly. And, infrastructure gets nodded through for planning. You build your roads, you build your bridges, you build your railways. Housing should be right there with them. Airports, building God, if it took as long to build flats, it does to build, choose runway 3. We'd never get anywhere, but that's slightly off the point. The thing is, it should be easier in established town centres to build buildings up to a height, let's say 10 stories, without it being a 3-year project just to get planned. And that is the problem. And until we sort that out, building hundreds of new towns in the countryside yes, it's got to happen. But actually, we've got thousands of town centres already. All of the, with all of the amenities that you need, with all of the transport facilities, all of that sort of thing, they're there. And you could put a lot of 10-storey buildings in them. And those are 10-storey buildings where young people want to live. And, you can have the suburbs and the countryside for young families and the like. But actually what people want is good quality central flats, which are, they're not charged the earth for. And that's what we try to produce.
Fantastic. And what about the positives? When you look back and you see all the sites you've done and the things you've achieved and so on, what are you most pleased about? What's given you some of the biggest satisfaction along the way?
What I'm delighted about is we're now being talked about being a sector in the property market, that they're calling it the build-to-rent sector. And when I set this up in 2012, everyone said, you're wasting your time, it's never going to work. People in England don't want this, they want to own their homes. So I'm so chuffed that now there are loads of others out there doing it. There's healthy competition, there's a load of people talking up the same projects. It's great. And I think that's, it will become, in the States, it's 30% of the market. There's no reason why it shouldn't be here, because actually it's good for the market, it's healthy, and it helps. So it ticks all the boxes.
Tremendous. Now, I'm going to be respectful of this man's time and allow him to get back to his busy day. But before we do, the future. What is the future, Harry? How do you see things rolling? Is there any particular expansion plans for Fizzy Living? Do you see anything that you really want to chase after that you've not already dealt with? What do you see looking longer term?
I think there are going to be great opportunities out there. There's been a bit of press recently, last couple of days, about us and potential partnerships. I think that having established the operational side and established the brand, there will be large propcos who own swathes of suitable land, city centre sites and that sort of thing, who the opportunities to partner up with those sorts of people. So we've got the money to pay for the development, and we've got the end game. It's getting the land in the first place. Right. I think that as councils free up land, for example, for this sort of development, they don't want to sell it anymore. They want to hang on to it and keep the income. Well, we're the sort of business that can get into bed with them, deliver the product, manage it for them, and they just get an income stream. And there are councils all around the country who would benefit from that. And that, again, would be sorting out a mixture of affordable and inexpensive open market rental projects, which are what the market right the way around the country needs.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely does. There's so much need there, and if people like yourselves can fill that and bring people together and form these communities, going back to that word again, then that can only be a positive thing. Absolutely fantastic. I've loved this chat, Harry. Absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure the listeners are the same. There might be developers and planners out there that are looking to get in touch. There might be your future tenants out there looking to get in touch. So for everyone listening, we've got the beautiful, handsome face of Harry Downs will be in the show notes, along with all of the links through to the company. So if you need to get in touch with him, then please do so. But he's got much more important stuff to do. He has to go back and mend bridges with poor Amelia. He has to change his speed dial structure. He has to spend much more time with the real Amelia, not these virtual ones. But Harry, for today, for your chat, for your insights, thank you very, very much indeed.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Hi folks, it's Richard here again. I really hope that you enjoyed today's show. Now listen, I've got 2 links to help support you on your property journey, and I want you to write these down when it's safe to do so. You might be driving in your car just now listening to the podcast, and that's fine, but please make sure that you get back to this and write down these links. Okay, are you ready? Got your pen in hand? So the first one, thisweekinproperty.com. Now that's the website for this podcast. On there, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss out. What you can also do on there is catch up on tons and tons of past episodes. There are hours and hours of property related content and some amazing guests with some fantastic insights to help you on your property journey. So that is thisweekinproperty.com. Okay, next link, propertyprotege.com. Now, let me spell that one out for you. PROPERTY PROTEGE That's propertyprotege.com. Now, what's it all about? Well, the Property Protege Intensive is designed to give you the lift that you need into the world of property. And if you've already started, if you've already got some experience, then this can help you accelerate your progress even further. The experiences that people have had at Protege and the success that they've achieved afterwards has been life-changing for many people. So go there right now if you're serious about property and if you want to build a highly successful property business. That's propertyprotege.com. So there you go. That's 2 links to some fantastic resources that are going to help you. And listen, talking about help, can you help me to help other people? You see, the more that we can share this podcast, then more people can learn from the fantastic guests that I've been so lucky to talk to. How can you help? Well, it's very simple and very quick. Just a short review on iTunes is going to help make that happen. If you go to thisweekinproperty.com/iTunes, that will guide you to the very place that you will be able to help other people. So thank you. Thanks for doing that, and thanks for listening into the show. And I look forward to bringing another great guest to you in the next show.